As you can see, I have my disguise on because it's the week of Halloween. My name is Shane. I help manage the iTube for Tourette's account, and I'm also Shane Apuli on YouTube. Guys, who wants to introduce themselves first?
Bethany does.
Bethany.
Okay, so I'm Bethany, and my YouTube alias is Surviving TS, and I'm 18.
Joe.
Oh, fuck.
Kale.
Kaylee.
Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. I'm Kaylee. My YouTube is VoxNihili281. I'm 19.
Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. On YouTube, I'm Sarah Henya, or Curls and Pearls 36. I'm 20 years old.
Oh, you've grown up so much. Joe.
Okay. My name's Johanna, and I just said that with an accent. And my YouTube name is JD11, and I'm 20.
And I forgot to say that I'm 24. So today we are talking about Tourette Syndrome and its different forms, how it can be mild and how it can be disabling.
What
And
the fuck is that?
And all of us here have experienced Tourette syndrome along different areas of that spectrum. And sometimes it can be mild for one person, and other times it can be very disabling. It depends on the person and their own personal experiences. So how about we start with mild Tourette's? Right now, in the media, traditionally, it's been what has been considered extreme Tourette syndrome has been presented in the media and over glamorized, given so much attention. And as a way to combat that, certain organizations have been trying to portray Tourette syndrome as being more mild. Unfortunately, that has been doing a disservice to those who experience Tourette syndrome in a very disabling sense. And we are here to bring light to that. So mild Tourette syndrome, how it's being portrayed right now, is sniffing like this, blinking, and then throat clearing. Those are the most mild symptoms of Tourette. People forget that traditionally Guy de la Tourette, he originally studied the extreme cases, severely disabling Tourette syndrome, and it's more of a recent convention to work with the mild cases and giving attention to that. So what else do you guys consider to be mild Tourette's? What's a mild for you? Because each of us has a different mild.
I guess
Sorry, go ahead.
mild and... Oh, what?
Go ahead, Kaylee.
Are we going here?
Go ahead, Johanna.
Okay. Oh. Okay. I guess I would consider mild to be where I'm at now. I mean, I have views from both sides of the spectrum because when I was 13, my tics were considered very mild, and they did not become debilitating until I was 16. So mild tics back then is what I would just twitch my neck to the side, and I would shrug my shoulders, and I would make a noise, and I would just consider those things mild tics because they didn't prevent me from doing normal things. They didn't prevent me from walking or going to the store and I don't know, just doing daily activities.
Yeah. And then you had a turn when you were older, and what did that look like for you?
I'm not really sure what you mean by what did it look like. I mean,
Well,
how did it change?
You just talked about when your tics were mild, and so contrast that for when they weren't mild.
Alright, so I went from just doing my normal tics, and I went to screaming things and convulsing on the ground. I mean, I spent almost my whole day on the floor because every time I get up, I just fall right back down, and I'd be, my head would be hitting the ground always. I'd always be hitting myself. I couldn't just get up and go walk the grocery store with my mom. If I would even get out, I'd have to be in a wheelchair, and I'd need to be monitored by somebody 24/7. I basically went from living an independent life to a life of being crippled by my own body, whereas I couldn't be left alone. I mean, it was rare that I would even be able to be alone in my bedroom like I am right now.
Wow. And now you're back to what you consider a mild sense of Tourette syndrome, and why is that?
I mean, I wouldn't consider myself as mild as I used to be. I consider myself more mild to moderate, but that anyway is beside the point. That's because I had deep brain stimulation July 16th and 17th of 2013, and I guess for those of you that don't know what that is, it entails having 2 batteries in your chest, running up wires to the brain, and it basically gives a constant current of stimulation to the mid-thalamus, which is where mine is placed. And in turn, it's basically stopped my tics 80 to 90%.
That's awesome. We also have another deep brain stimulation person, Haley. She's holding up her remote. Say hi so you show up.
Hi. And
what is it that you're holding, Kaylee?
This is my programmer. I hold it over the batteries that are placed in my stomach area, and I use it to actually control the amount of voltage that is delivered to my brain, because they sync up kind of like a phone and a computer, and you change the voltage or turn it on and off or change the settings.
And that basically controls your Tourette syndrome symptoms.
Yeah, they don't know why it helps exactly, but it seems to sort of deactivate the area of the brain where the electrodes are inserted, which, like Johanna, mine is in the centromedian thalamus. I've seen maybe a 50% improvement in symptoms in the only 4 months that I've had it, because I had mine done June 16th and 17th of this year, 4 months ago.
And Johanna, do you have a similar remote control to your brain?
Yeah, mine's exactly the same.
Cool. And Kaylee, talk about your mild for you. What was mild for you?
My tics first developed around age 7, and then I started having, because I would rub my ankles together, and then I developed nodding and grunting, kind of like that. I was diagnosed at age 9, and it didn't create many issues for me until kids started bullying me in school, and that was very devastating, because I already had social anxiety, so this was completely polarizing, That was an issue until...
Would you say that the social disability was imposed by other people, or was it partially also partly your responsibility and in insecurities? Like, we will feel insecure because of certain beliefs we have about ourselves, but then there's things that other people do that make life impossible sometimes.
Well, I already had some insecurity, like you were saying, but I think the way the other kids saw it and responded to that was very vicious. So I want to say most of the responsibility was theirs.
And this was when you were...
bullying. I was 9. I was 9. I was mild, yes. I was mild. Very mild relative to when my tics became severe, finally, when I was about 14. They became extremely debilitating, would disrupt everything from walking to trying to sit up, trying to see, trying to eat, trying to speak. You name it, I couldn't do it,
No.
And that's when your body became your own enemy. That's when the Tourette syndrome itself became disabling.
Yeah, the Tourette's itself became extremely debilitating. I would hit myself. I'd be in pain. I'd be sorry, my programmer keeps beeping. But yeah, my Tourette's became extremely severe. About as severe as it gets, actually. A lot like Johanna.
And how about Sarah?
I started showing tics probably when I was about 7. I had a particular tic where I would pop out my shoulder blade from alignment and repurpose it back in, which didn't really hurt me until I would continuously do it. which is why I was originally put on medication. But as I get older, I found that the medication to me was more debilitating than the tics themselves. So I went off of the medication, and from about age 14 to about age, I would say 19, I was in a very mild place. I didn't really have any words. The outbursts that I had were all what people consider to be cute and adorable noises. They were endearing to people.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
No, bitch.
I guess so.
That one
She
is,
didn't.
Kaylee's is very endearing. She threatens to kill us all.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
No, bitch.
The reason people made fun of me was not because of my Tourette's, but because they didn't like me personally. So I would say that the bullying was not because of my condition, but because I was just sort of the scapegoat in my school already before people found out that I had the condition. Although they were very hesitant to believe that it was real, and they decided that I was faking it very early on.
That's sad. I met somebody who knew you when you were younger, and yeah, I heard something that was similar to the attitude that you're talking about right now.
Yeah, I'm totally not faking it. I was diagnosed. Yeah, been through it. But more recently, I started developing, I would say, what I'd call more severe symptoms. I no longer have those really big tic attacks where you just sort of, it's like seizure-like, can't get up, you can't speak, you're like lying down kind of thing. So I no longer have those, which is great. But I do have tics where if they don't hurt, then it doesn't satisfy it. So I'm constantly hitting myself or scratching myself in order to make it go away. And that I would consider more severe.
Yeah. Do you feel that, like, what point are you at right now in your life with that?
I am considering trying medication again to see what that would do for me. It's low, no, especially now that I'm driving a lot. It can be very difficult when I'm driving. I have to pull over sometimes so that I'm not endangering people around me when I either can't see when I'm driving or my ankles are moving around, so I'm not touching the pedals, or I'd have to take my hands off of the steering wheel, so that can be difficult. For that reason, I'm considering that medication might be a good option.
Bethany, what about you? What has your progression been like? Like, what was mild for you, and what is severe for you, and where are you at now?
Okay, so as far as I can remember, my tics started when I was really, really little, probably about 3 or 4. I had little like chirpy sounds, and I bounced. I still have that bouncing tic. Kaylee, you okay?
Yeah, I'm good. Just
Great.
the dysonic
And
steering.
yeah, and then
Okay, that's fine.
last year I suddenly got worse, like overnight. I went from my like 2 or 3 tics that I had to maybe 20, 30 tics, and they continually got worse to the point where I now have tic attacks almost on a daily basis, where I'm just in the floor for hours at a time. I can't move, or I can move, but I can't really do anything. I can't eat, I can't speak. Sometimes I can't see. I now have to get around with crutches. But like sometimes my tics are still mild. Like right now, they're at a mild point. And then sometimes they're severe. So my tics just go up and down a lot.
As is typical of Tourette's. The wax wane.
I wanted to move the topic along, but I just realized I didn't go. For me, we have video footage of, I just found this a while ago, but video footage of when I was 7, and I definitely had motor tics back then, tics that I actually present today with, and it was surprising to find that. So, I say they're mild tics, but at the same time, some of those tics cause bleeding and scabbing for me, and so in some ways, I guess it was a bit more severe. But moving on, when I was 18, my tics just exploded, seemingly out of nowhere, because we had no idea that I had a tic disorder until stuff started flying out of my mouth, and I was yelling things and moving uncontrollably. And even though it seemed extreme at that time, I can say that the only disabling part for me was the social part. It was socially disabling, and so I avoided people as much as possible. And then I think that responsibility was mostly on me. I was socially disabling myself, but at the same time, it is very unnerving going from what you thought you were a normal person into being someone who randomly shouts things all the time. Moving on from that, my tics actually did become disabling to the point of collapsing, hurting myself, hitting myself. I tense up and I lock up. Sometimes it's kind of convulsive, but not really. I'll just like, it's sort of like having a bowing, like you're bowing over and over and over and over, and the damage it can do to your body, and trying to brush your teeth at the same time. It just becomes impossible. And so, yes, there are times where my tics become disabling, especially with the tensing lockup. It actually triggers real muscle spasms. And at camp this past summer, my hip actually locked up twice, and I could physically not walk for the rest of camp. I was already in a wheelchair, so, that worked out fine. It was no different than what I'd already been doing, but I couldn't put my own socks on because my hip was completely locked up. And that's disabling. That is Tourette being disabling in my life. And right now, I just go through fluctuations. I have periods where I'm tic-free, or very low tic, or very quiet, mild tics. And then what can seem like a mild tic, what starts out as a mild tic, like maybe just a neck twitch, after you do that 500 times in one day, the inflammation and the swelling and the pain, that's when it becomes disabling. So mild isn't always mild. And like I said during the hangout before, so one person who has a blinking tic might be mild, but the other person who has a blinking tic is blinking so much that they can't see. And that's disabling, when a person can't see because of their tics, or a person can't brush their teeth, or walk, or dress themselves, or feed.
I'm gonna fucking kill you.
No, bitch.
No.
I think that disabling can also depend on your location. For instance, when I'm at home, if I'm hitting my head against the wall, yeah, it hurts, but I can continue about my nightly routine. I continue to watch videos or whatever. But if I'm in a classroom setting and I'm hitting my head against the wall next to me, then I have to literally get up and leave the class, because I cannot pay attention while I'm hurting myself.
And neither can anybody else.
Yeah.
Because they're probably, like, really worried about you, like...
Oh, of course, yeah.
Or they're just sitting there staring like, what's she doing?
So
well, they probably figured it out by then, like,
yeah,
sure.
Tourette's.
My college has a really wonderful program called the Disability Resources and Services, and I basically have this get out of jail free card, where if at any point my tics are becoming too distracting for others or myself, I can get up and leave without any explanation. And yeah, I'm responsible for what happens in that class, but I don't have to sit there and make everybody else, or I don't know. I don't know how to complete that sentence, because really making them go through it it's not my fault, so I'm not making them do anything. But at the same time, sometimes Tourette's and class just don't go together.
I have something to throw out there. Verbal tics. Verbal tics can be disabling in some circumstances and not in others. So if you're like cursing your mouth off at home because you're ticking, that might not be disabling. But if you're at church,
oh yeah,
temple, then that becomes disabling, because unless you have a really awesome congregation that seriously does not care, you're probably going to want to leave the sanctuary, and that's going to prevent you from being able to participate in the religious functions, and that is a disability. You're not able to participate. That is disabled.
Chihuahua, woof.
And
Yep.
then for me, I have hugging tics, and at camp and at home, and even at school with my classmates, if I have a hugging tic, it's not a big deal. But if I'm on the subway, surrounded by strangers, that's not cool, and that's a serious issue. And for me, if I don't have a hugging tic, my brain spazzes out. I don't even know if it's so much a tic at this point as much as a sensory requirement, because my brain is glitching, and so I start to shut down. So that can be disabling.
Like you were saying about like being in class, like for me, I had a very profoundly disabling. I mean, I was already profoundly disabled, like with motor tics, but my vocal tics ended up being the straw that broke the camel's back because it got me kicked out of my college classes, basically. So like you're saying,
remember,
you know, what was fine in the dining hall, like me and my friends would just laugh it off, whatever. In the classroom, the college threatened disciplinary action if it happened again.
Can I just put out there for those who are watching, that is not right. If your college is threatening disciplinary action because of your medical symptom, that is discrimination, and they can't do that.
I was very upset about, you know, I understood like that, you know, maybe we needed to work something out where I could like telecommute to class, but when they threatened disciplinary action, I was devastated because, you know, like you were saying, it felt very unfair because, you know, it's not something I'm doing on purpose, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, the fucking cat.
Pat, can I get a raise of hands? How many people here have been in a wheelchair at one point or another because of their tics? Raise your hand. And say me.
Me.
And Kaylee. What about Bethany? Bethany, you use different mobility devices.
Yes.
You have two. You have two different handheld ones. Can you explain to us what those are, Bethany?
Sure. Currently I used to use a cane, and
What
so
kind?
basically it's just a walking cane, just a regular like walking stick. And that was just because my tics got to a point where I would do a lot of leg tics and I would fall, and so that was just to help me stay balanced. And then I developed a falling tic where I would just I just throw myself on the ground, and my cane wasn't helping with that. The cane would just go with me and crash on the floor. So I had to switch to forearm crutches to get around, and so it's basically like a cane on both sides, and I can now catch myself and stop myself from falling in the floor. But my tics are progressing past the use of my crutches, so a wheelchair is becoming a possible option for me.
And weren't you also a white cane user at one point too?
Oh yes, yes, I do have a seeing eye cane that I use. It's just a white cane with a red tip. That when I have my blinking tics so bad that I can't see, or I have my tics where my eyes are rolling back in my head and I can't see, I use it to get around.
Yeah. So there's a lot of different tools that some of us use to circumvent our disability. Kaylee has a unique tool that the rest of us don't have. It has 4 legs.
His name is Mac. He's my service dog. He helps me with a lot of things. He does deep pressure, which really helps stop an attack for me. He's also acted as like a guide dog when I can't see because of eye tics. He pulls my manual wheelchair, and particularly useful was like when I couldn't see and I was in my power chair, he could act as a guide, which was great because, you know, I can see. So.
That's great.
Yeah.
And then I have a weighted blanket. I have a weighted blanket. Eventually, I'm going to get a weighted blanket that has 4 legs and a tail, aka a service dog, but currently I have to carry mine if I need it, and that helps calm tics and other issues. Can't really think of what else I use to circumvent tics. Johanna, what do you use?
I guess just my wheelchair and my crutches, but I don't really use my forearm crutches as much because of a lot of the upper body tics that I have. Would cause me to throw the crutch or hurt somebody else with it. So realistically, it would just become a weapon, and I would end up on the ground anyway. So the wheelchair was the best option.
And then you and Kaylee, I'm going to also include the deep brain stimulation probes and the batteries and the remote as an adaptive tool to cope with the Tourette syndrome, to keep it from disabling you so that you can move on with the day and with life.
Oh yeah, I'd be on the ground right now convulsing just because we're talking.
Yeah.
And then Bethany, you have a vest, a weighted vest instead of a weighted blanket, right?
Right.
I have parents that sit on me.
Matt's not with me, never asking
for that.
Yeah, my friend.
Weighted anything. Adults.
And then I also want to include medication is another tool that also helps prevent disability. Oh, Bethany, show us that one.
This thing?
That's a tool.
It's a baby teether, but believe it or not, I have biting tics that bite through my skin. So this is my little friend.
This is what I use for that.
I need to get one of those.
It's very helpful.
Biting and screaming and cursing and works for everything. The tap.
Sarah, do you have any particular adaptive devices that you use or no?
I have my boyfriend.
You have your boyfriend.
He helps quite a bit. When I used to have attacks, my boyfriend would sit next to me, make sure there was a pillow under me, rub my forehead, which I really enjoy. Sensorily, that is one of my spots that just really calms me down. Other than that, I haven't found putting things on top of me to be helpful, mostly because anything on top of my shoulders triggers my shoulder tics really severely. So I generally don't like that. But something to bite on is a really good idea.
And
sorry, I thought of another one.
You said you were gonna consider medication, and that would count as an adaptation.
I think because of all my comorbid conditions like anxiety and depression, I was thinking, because my anxiety triggers my tics quite a bit, if I could lessen my anxiety through medication, I would probably greatly reduce my tics. So I'm going to try seeing what that does.
Okay. Oh, Kaylee, you said you thought of another one. What was that?
Oh yeah, well I actually have several more. I don't know if we want to go into all of them, but one thing that really helps me is using like an iPod, because sounds tend to trigger my tics because of comorbid sensory issues. So using like an iPod really helps me prevent attacks from, starting out.
I find that when I'm on my phone, my smartphone, or my iPad, that my tics subside because I get really absorbed into it. And then, so that helps me when I'm in public and on the train. But for some reason, on trains and buses, the motion calms me, and it's really meditative, so I don't really need anything. I just sort of zone out. It's really nice. It's like an awake nap.
Cool.
I also want to bring up school accommodations. School accommodations are another way to adapt. And then working accommodations, which I have not been successful at yet, unfortunately, but it's coming. I guess I technically have one work accommodation in that they got me my radio. They just put my name on it. Like, I never even asked for it. It's just that I'm in my wheelchair so frequently right now at this unfortunate phase of my life. So somebody is just really kind. Whenever they see that I'm scheduled to work, they grab a walkie-talkie for me at work and they put my name on it so nobody else takes it, and then I don't have to like reach over the counter and feel around the secretary's stuff just to see if there's a walkie-talkie laying around. So yeah, but school accommodations and work accommodations count. Well,
Yeah, school accommodations. So at my school we have a specific program for that, depending on your diagnosis, and they have a whole list of things that you can have. For me, I have optional separate rooms for test taking, so that I don't have to pay any attention to holding back my tics while taking a test, and I can just freely let them out in whatever separate room I'm in and take the test in peace. Extra time if I need it for testing, leaving the room again if I need that, and there's a whole other list of things that are options, and I can sort of pick and choose what works for me, and professors at my school are just infinitely understanding. I think it's because it's a state school and not private.
okay. Well, even private schools have to abide by certain regulations in regards to disability accommodations, because there's always something that they may accept federal funding in some ways, or the school may just have the policy of being ADA and FRA 504 compliant. So you also don't have to limit yourself to what they list for possible accommodations, because you may have a unique need. Like with Kaylee, I had suggested one semester, the FM system, where that's usually used for students who are hard of hearing. For Kaylee, the sounds in the classroom were triggering her tics. So by having the headphones with the teacher's voice coming by a microphone directly to the headphones, she was able to focus on just the teacher's voice and not have the other noises in the room trigger her tics. Yep. And that's something that might not be on a list of accommodations for a person with Tourette syndrome, because that was a very
out of the box.
Yeah, there are so many possibilities out there, so many possibilities for adaptation, that the state of being disabled can be very transient and very dependent on your surroundings, and not so much your diagnosis or your current plethora of tics or your current state of disability. If your environment is suited for you, then you are 100% capable.
In some cases, yeah.
Yeah.
Like wheelchair accessibility, like if you need a wheelchair, and everything's accessible, you're great, but if it's not accessible, then, you're kind of out of luck. Or like in a social situation.
I put the locks on my wheelchair and I moved the store displays out of my way.
Same thing. I'm like, you are not ADA. Here, I'll fix it.
I'm just doing them a favor.
Yeah.
Well, at the same time, like, if I can't fit in there with my wheelchair, the shopping cart most certainly cannot.
True.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just doing everyone a favor. And
yeah.
I don't know. I was going to go on a tangent, but I'm realizing the time now. So I think have we hit everything on our list? Is there anything on our topic list that anyone wants to add to before we wrap up? Does it all look good?
I think like a lot of you guys hit on accommodations in college, and I just wanted to hit real quick on like the application process for college. I found that it's actually best to just be out and open with people, especially during interviews, about your Tourette's and about your possible accommodations. And I've found that the schools are a lot more receptive to asking for the accommodations before you even apply, versus just waiting and like I guess hiding things until you've already applied and been accepted. Yeah.
It's a process, because your relationship, it's almost like you're dating the schools that you want to go to, because you constantly have to be in contact with those schools, and so it's like you're reminding them over and over who you are, what you need, and what you want to do, and you're gonna be reiterating that a lot. And it's not so much
Fucking kill you.
that
Fuck.
it's not so much that I think people hide things. I don't think that you should make it a focus of your application that you're disabled, but being open when you're at the school for a tour or when you're talking to the admissions office, being open about that, that's a really big deal. Like for me, I'm constantly asking, I ask the schools about their service dog policy up front so that I know how much effort I'm gonna need that I'm gonna need to put forth in making sure that accommodation is met, because that's a really complicated accommodation sometimes because other people make it complicated. Not that it should be complicated, just because sometimes it becomes a problem. And so it's just going to be a lot of reminders. At the same time, you don't want your application to say Bethany, surviving Tourette syndrome girl who sometimes uses crutches as a name. It's when you're interacting with them in person, be completely yourself and open about your needs, because if the school doesn't fit, that's like buying a shoe in the wrong size. That's really dumb, especially if you're going to be spending $100,000 to get an education there. Or more, probably more, a lot more, because I was just thinking 25 a year, but no, it's never 25 a year.
A lot of folks wish.
Yeah.
All right. So we've hit on a lot today, and that's a really good topic for us to do another full video on college and Tourette syndrome. But I guess we've hit everything on mild versus disabling Tourette syndrome. I hope our audience has learned a lot and or felt validated by their own experiences. Anyway, this is Shane signing off. Anybody else want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everybody.